How's it going, everybody? Welcome to Zone Defense. I'm Drew, joined as always by my co-host Chris. Be sure to follow us on Spotify at Zone Defense Podcast, on Instagram at Zone Defense Podcast, on Twitter at Zone Defense Pod, and subscribe to our YouTube channel at Zone Defense Podcast. And be sure to ring that bell to get post notifications. Today, we're going to do an episode that I've been looking forward to doing for months now, an episode that I never thought we would have the chance to do. And Chris, what are we going to talk about today?
Today we're going to go into the NBA bubble restart. I'm really excited to talk about this today. We haven't really done that many NBA episodes lately, and I'm really excited to talk about some teams that are going to surprise us, some teams that are going to underperform, and, some players that we're interested in, and just kind of the entire thing as a whole, just summing it up. I think it's going to be a really exciting, really fun episode, and I'm really excited for the NBA to start back up.
Yeah, this is an episode, like I said at the top, I never thought we were going to have the opportunity to do this episode just because, 4 months ago, 3 months ago, heck, even 2 weeks ago, it didn't look like the NBA was ever going to come back. And now it seems at least that they're at least going to start playing games. They started doing scrimmages yesterday. That was really kind of fun and kind of weird to watch for a little bit. But I'm just super excited the NBA is finally back. And we're finally able to talk about actual live sports on this podcast, which, believe it or not, we've never actually got the opportunity to do. So do you want to jump into our first question here?
Yeah, we can go on to the first one on the list, just kind of how much players testing positive for corona is going to affect the restart. I guess I'll start off by answering. We saw that list of the amount of people, I think it was 360 or something of the NBA players all got tested, and there was 0 positive cases. So I think in that regard, it might be a very limited impact on the thing, or on the entire bubble in general. But I feel like there's going to be some positive tests by maybe some cases from people like Russell Westbrook who tested positive for it. He's got to come into the bubble at some point. Who knows? I don't think anyone really knows exactly how it gets spread in depth. So you kind of have a little risk factor there, and I'm sure there's a few other players that you kind of have to keep in mind as well in that. So they could spread it around a little bit, but I really don't see it being a huge impact besides just kind of erasing home field advantage and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think that unless there is like a huge outbreak, and I just realized there's a typo on this. It's not COVID-29, it's COVID-19. So let's change that real quick. Obviously, unless there's like a mass amount of people that get infected with this obviously terrible sickness, terrible virus, I think they're just going to keep on trucking here. They'll have to be in quarantine. They'll have to kind of take a break, and it could really impact the team. You look at a guy like Westbrook. If he got it in the middle of a playoff series with Houston, their chances of winning that series probably go out the window because of just how important Westbrook is to that team. So I think in that instance, it could really impact the season. However, I know there's a lot of speculation that the whole league will just shut down completely if a few people test positive. I don't really see that happening unless there's just a ton of people getting infected. And I honestly, I was very pessimistic that this was even going to happen. But now that it is happening, I am kind of more optimistic because you see these initial test results. They are pretty good for both the NBA and also the NHL. They're kind of doing their own modified bubble, and that's promising. And I think that the NBA is going to do a really good job at containing this bubble and making sure people are as safe as they can be. And hopefully we get to see the whole season. At least we're going to see a couple weeks of NBA at the very least. So, yeah.
Yeah, well said there for sure. Yeah, if a star was to get it, that could be a bigger impact than maybe the volume of people getting it. Just if a few random players get it, it's not going to be that big of a deal. But if you see a guy Westbrook already had it, but if you even see like a Giannis go down with getting corona or something like that in the middle of a playoff, their finals chances just go right out the window. So I think it's more on who gets it rather than how many get it. And I think they will get this done for sure. I think this will go pretty well. I think there'll be a limited amount of cases, but you never know because it's very easy to spread. So it's possible there's an outbreak by someone just kind of bringing it into the bubble, maybe from the outside.
Do you think that the virus somehow like delegitimize the season in any way if somebody gets it?
No, I don't really think so because I think every team runs the risk of getting it. I think there's a pretty equal chance that it could hurt any one of the teams in the playoffs or even in the playoff race. So I don't really think it delegitimizes anything because of that equal chance of just anybody getting it because they're all in the same place. Maybe if they were in different cities with different outbreak outlooks or something like that, that would be a little bit different and may skew the results a little bit. But since they're all in the same place, I think it'd be a pretty legitimate championship for me.
Yeah, I also agree, and I think even if, like you said there, like if a Westbrook or a Giannis uh, contracts this virus and is out for 2 weeks or whatever the protocol is, I think that it'd just be the same thing as someone going down with an injury. I mean, we saw last year in the finals, KD and Clay went down with injuries and kind of changed the course of the NBA Finals. And I don't want to say help I mean, definitely help the Raptors win. I don't think that's the only reason they won the championship, but we don't really look down on that title with any asterisk or anything like that. So I think obviously the virus is a lot worse than your typical injury. However, I think that people contracting it's not entirely different than someone going down with a season-ending injury in the playoffs. I think it kind of has, in my opinion at least, kind of has that same impact on the team that an injury would have. So, yeah, I think the NBA obviously has a good plan in place, and I think hopefully it'll lead to a promising playoff series, a season. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Let's get into our next question. We kind of lingered on this one, so let's go into the next one. The Grizzlies right now sit at the 8th seed, a couple games up all these teams, but out of the Pelicans, Blazers, and Kings, which one of those teams do you think could knock them off the 8th seed?
So I I know that the sexy pick right now is to say Blazers. I mean, all week I've been reading Blazers, 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 and I know you're a big Blazers fan, so I'm sure you're going with the Blazers. So just to be different, I'm gonna go completely off the board, and I'm kind of skip ahead to one of our questions who might be the biggest surprise because I'm gonna probably shock some people with this pick, but I think the Sacramento Kings have like a legitimate chance at maybe squeaking into that 8th seed. I mean, honestly, I think if Portland gets that 8th seed, I know there's people are like, oh, they're going to upset the Lakers. I think they have a legitimate shot at upsetting the Lakers if they get to the 8th seed. If the Kings get into the 8th seed and beat the Grizzlies in the play-in tournament thing, I don't really think they can beat the Lakers. However, they're just as many games back as Portland and New Orleans. They're both 3.5 back right now. And if you look at the strength of schedule here, obviously, it's been well documented. The Pelicans have the easiest stretch here of the 8-game kind of ramp up to kind of settle who gets into playoffs and who doesn't. They have the easiest, but the Kings are right there. They have the 3rd easiest schedule, and the Blazers have the 5th most difficult schedule. So, I mean, I think you got to take that into account. I know, obviously, the season hasn't been played for like 4 months now, and you can't really take momentum into consideration. But the Kings were one of the hottest teams in basketball. They won 7 of their last 10 games prior to the hiatus, and they were really kind of rounding out into form. They got a talented team. I think Bagley is not going to come back, but he was really kind of down with injuries most of the season anyway. They got a good team with Fox, Bogdanovich, Hield, even Nemanja, even Harry Giles. They got a solid team, and I think they maybe can surprise some people and maybe even upset the Grizzlies in the play-in tournament. I think it's a legitimate shot, and literally nobody's talking about it.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely an interesting pick. See, when you said you wanted to go with the sexy pick, I thought you were going to go with the Pelicans just because they had Zion and they were kind of getting hot coming out right at the end of the season there. But I am going to go with the Blazers. I don't think it's as sexy of a pick as what you're saying, but I do think they're getting more healthy with Nurkic coming back, maybe with even Zach Collins coming back as well. Having Dame back because he had that little injury spurt as well. He's going to be back and well rested, healthy as well. And CJ McCollum. I think this is a team that if they can get hot, they can beat this tough schedule because they got Memphis, they got Boston, Houston, Denver, LA, Philadelphia, Dallas, and Brooklyn. I think that's a doable schedule. And I think they can maybe not run the table, but can win 6 or 7 of those games. If the Grizzlies have a tough time with some of these, and if they can knock down the Grizzlies in their game as well, that could be a big advantage. So I think the Blazers have a decent chance. I wouldn't say it's a great chance, but I think they do have the best chance of the 3 to knock them off, just because I think they have the best player of those 3 teams, as well as they are becoming more healthy, which was a big problem, and I think that's the reason they're not the 8 seed or higher right now. I think this is a playoff team if they can get hot, and the Grizzlies kind of falter.
Yeah, I think that Portland, I think preseason they were predicted to be like a 6 or 7 seed, and I mean they just got decimated by injuries. They're finally healthy. I think they definitely have the most experience of any of those. Even if you count the Grizzlies, out of those 4 teams, they have the most experience. They got the best player. They got, in my opinion, one of the top 10 players in the game in Damian Lillard. It's just that tough schedule kind of scares me. However, I think with CJ, with Dame, with Nurkic coming back, I know they don't have Trevor Reeves. He's not making the trip to Orlando, but they still got Melo. they got a solid team here, and I think they could make some noise. And I know everyone's like, oh, they're going to upset the Lakers. I'm not going to go that far, but I think they could definitely maybe scare the Lakers in a first round matchup, and I think they can definitely beat the Grizzlies in 2 games in the play-in tournament.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at as well. I think this is the team, if they do get into that spot, I think this is the scariest team for the Lakers to have to deal with because they do, when they're healthy, they can definitely match up. But I think Nurkic could give AD a little bit of trouble. I'm not saying he's going to stop him, but he's a good enough player to contain him enough. I think LeBron will win out because he is obviously the best player. I think he's still the best player in the league and the best player in that matchup. But I think the Blazers would give them a heck of a scare, man. I think they would win 2 or 3 even in that series. So I think if they get to that 8 spot, which is a very, very reasonable possibility, then they are the best equipped for the playoffs out of these 3 teams.
Yeah, I think in this 8-game ramp up, I know there's some of teams that already make the playoffs. They can really shift like who kind of lands in that 3, 4, 5, 6 matchup. But this race to the 8th seed, the race to the play-in tournament is definitely going to be the most interesting because the Blazers, the Kings, and the Grizzlies are all exciting teams to watch. And we haven't even talked about the New Orleans Pelicans yet, which I think we should touch on at least briefly before jumping into our next question. Obviously, Zion's not there, and that's kind of factored in my decision to not pick them.
Yeah.
Because I think even if he misses a few games, I mean, there's only 8 games, which seems like kind of a lot, but really isn't that much when you're trying to make up ground and try and pass a good Blazers team and a good Kings team. Even though they do have an easy schedule, they still have a lot of solid players with Brandon Ingram and Lonzo Ball. Do you think that they have a potential shot to force that game with Memphis, even if Zion misses most of the games or even maybe all the games? Or do you think they might be kind of done?
I think it just comes down to how long it takes him to get back there. Because if he's back within a game or 2, I think they have a shot. And especially when they play him in the if they can get to the playing game, I think they would beat the Grizzlies in a playing game as long as Zion is there. But if he is not there, I think they're one of the worst teams in the bubble. Even with Brandon Ingram and Lonzo, these are still young guys that don't have a lot of have no playoff experience. So you kind of have to see what they do in that. I actually do really like Lonzo Ball. I think he's very underrated. I think he's actually a really good player. I think he will be a future playoff star when it comes down to it on this team. But I don't see it this year. I think this is good. If Zion is not there, I think this is really good playoff experience for everybody else on the team. But if he is there, I think this team could make some noise as well. I think that'd be a tough out for the Lakers. I think the Lakers could take care of any of these teams, whoever gets there. But I think the Pelicans and Blazers are most equipped to give them some problems.
Yeah, I agree. Even though they have the easier schedule, I just don't see it happening with New Orleans if Zion doesn't come back. But I think it's definitely going to be fun to watch for sure, like I said earlier, because I think all 3 of these teams have a legitimate shot, even though, again, no one's talking about Sacramento. I think they have a legitimate shot at making it into the play-in games and then even beating Memphis in those 2 games to get that 8th seed and face most likely the Lakers in a first-round matchup. It'll be fun to watch. But let's jump to the next question into the far less interesting race to the play-in series in the East, considering there's only 1 team, and it's the Washington Wizards. Tons of players have already said, Bradley Beal, Davis Bertans, most notably, that they're not going to play in Orlando. So do you think the Wizards have any chance at forcing a play-in series against either the Nets or the Magic, or do you think they're pretty much done?
No, I think it's over for them. I don't think they have a single chance to win, especially if Beal's not going to be there. I really don't even think there's a point for them to show up personally. With the East being weak, if they were to show up, it would be a kind of an interesting battle, but I don't see it. I don't think we have to spend a ton of time on the question. I just don't really think this is a very talented team around Bradley Beal, and even Bertans is all right. But besides that, I really don't think they even have an above-average NBA player on this team.
Yeah, yeah. You said it right there. We don't have to spend a lot of time on this question. I really wish Beal would have stayed and played just to see if maybe he can go on a run here and maybe sneak the Wizards into a game against, like I said, a Brooklyn or an Orlando. But without him, without Bertans, who's one of if not the best big shooting 3 guy in the league, yeah, they're done, and there's just really not much more to talk about. They're not going to make it unless Ish Smith just drops 45 every night. Who knows? But yeah, we can move on to the next question here, which is very interesting to me because I feel like I'm not sure how many kind of podcasts or things you've read leading into this restart, but I feel like the Blazers are a big, sexy pick here to maybe make some noise in the West. And the Sixers are getting a lot of steam as a team that could maybe upset either a Milwaukee, a Toronto, a Boston. and maybe even make a run at the finals. So do you think Embiid and Simmons can maybe set aside their play style differences and maybe lead the Philadelphia 76ers on a run here to the finals? Because before the season, they were a legitimate finals pick, and they really kind of disappointed. They're the 6th seed currently in the East. Do you think they have a shot to maybe make some noise here in the playoffs?
Yeah, I actually I do kind of like this take where people are starting to give them kind of some dark horse love to make it to the finals because in the restart, they can get healthy, they can get back in shape. Embiid and Simmons together, I know their play styles clash, and I know opinion on Embiid. You can check out our other most overrated NBA players list. Me and Drew both had Embiid on it, but we are both in agreement that he is a very good player still and a very well equipped player to at least be a key contributor in the playoffs. But I think Ben Simmons. He might move to the 4. I've seen a couple articles say he might move to the 4 for the playoffs, which is very interesting for him. I don't know exactly what they're going to do. Maybe they're matching him up against faster guys or something, trying to play a little bit smaller with another point guard in there. But I'm not really sure how that's going to work. But I really love Ben Simmons as a player, and I think he has the talent to kind of put this team on his back and get them into at least that Eastern Conference Finals game. I think this is a team that is well equipped to make it to the Eastern Conference Finals. As long as they don't run into the Bucks before then, I think they can get there. And I think they're a tough matchup. They're going to be a really tough out for basically any team. I think they match up well with a lot of teams as well because they also have Tobias Harris, but you can't forget about him. And Al Horford's not a terrible player either. So their starting 5 is very good. It's going to be a big depth problem with them. I think their depth is really not great, and I think that could be the downfall of them and the reason they won't get to the finals. But I think they have a very decent chance of getting to at least the Eastern Conference Finals. I don't know how you feel about that.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the Sixers, they have the talent, and that hasn't really been an issue here all season long. It's mainly just been them just not winning. And I think you have to look at their home record. They were 29-2 at home and 10-24 on the road. And obviously, each of these games is going to be kind of like it's a neutral site game, but kind of like a road game. And that 10-24 record away from their home arena there in Philadelphia kind of scares me a little bit. However, you look at the talent; they got the talent there, and I think if Embiid can stay healthy and he can be the MVP candidate that people thought he was going to be heading into this year, and he showed flashes of it obviously last year and even the season before that, and I think they have a legitimate shot. And like you said, we did say Embiid was overrated, but I think as overrated as Embiid is, I think Ben Simmons might be just as underrated because,
Right.
yeah, he can't shoot the 3. He's not the best shooter in the world, but he can do everything else at a very high level. And Josh Richardson, Tobias Harris, Al Horford, guys who really haven't had the best seasons. But I mean, you give this team it's only 8 games to make into the playoffs here. They're already in the playoffs. And then who knows? I mean, we really don't know what's going to happen. I mean, 4 months is a long time. And if you told me that by whenever the finals is going to be, I think it's in October, that we see the Sixers maybe even in the finals, it really wouldn't shock me. I think they even have the potential, which could kind of hurt their chances of making it to the conference finals at least, because they're currently the 6th seed. They're tied with the Pacers for the 5th seed. I think that they have enough to maybe pass the Pacers and get into that 5th seed. And I think they have a shot at maybe even beating Miami in the first round. But then they'd probably face Milwaukee there in the second round, and that is not great because we obviously, I guess they lost to Toronto last year, but I think Milwaukee's the clear favorite in the East, so that kind of scares me. Their chances of making it to the Eastern Conference Finals, but they're still a good team, and I think they deserve a lot of the hype they're getting here, at least the last few weeks.
Yeah, I almost think they need to stay in that 6th spot because I think they're a tough matchup for the Heat. And I mean, even you look at teams like the Celtics and Raptors. If they end up running into one of those teams, I think that those teams are going to have a problem. I think they might honestly be my favorite to get out of that spot. I mean, I do like the Celtics, but we're going to go over it a little bit later. But I think they have a big question mark, and I kind of I see it down kind of around in our question section, so I'm excited to talk about them as well. But yeah, I like the Sixers. I like Simmons a lot, and I think they have a lot of talent in the starting lineup. Like I said, it's going to come down to whether maybe a piece can kind of step up into a 6-man role, help out the starting lineup. And it's also, you have to remember, this is basically a season reset at this point.
Yeah.
So all these disappointing seasons like Tobias Harris, Al Horford, very disappointing this year, and even Josh Richardson, who struggled to stay on the court. All these guys are going to have a reset. So it doesn't matter what they did before. They're in the playoffs now. If one of them kind of step into a star role going forward, then who cares what they did at the early part of the season? They can really have a chance to prove themselves as great basketball players and on a great team.
Yeah, and that's something, I mean, I know it's probably come up here a lot, but it's like it's a brand new season. I think that was kind of the branding, the tagline the NBA was kind of going with there for a little while. That is literally is a brand new season. I mean, the 4 months is longer than some teams have in a regular offseason. So, I mean, we see teams every year that get off to a hot October, November, December, and then they completely fall apart and don't even make the playoffs. So, I mean, if you have a hot October, November, December, you're probably going to win the championship. So, we kind of have to wait and see. And it would not surprise me if Philadelphia finally kind of figures their stuff out here a little bit and goes on a run and maybe even wins the championship. Who knows? We really don't know because it's a brand new season. And with that being said, though, I think if the Sixers just continue to kind of fall apart and Embiid gets hurt, Simmons is still good, but then doesn't really get any help. Their depth definitely concerns me. And they could also lose in the first round. It would not entirely surprise me if Miami or Boston beats them in the first round. So they're an unpredictable team under normal circumstances, let alone when we're coming back from a pandemic after a four-month hiatus. So they're definitely going to be a fun team to watch, especially in an East where not a lot of teams are fun to watch.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Let's jump into our next question. Going over the obvious finals favorites, at least in the Western Conference, the LA Clippers, the LA Lakers. Which team do you think really has a chance to knock them out of the playoffs before that conference final? Because I think they will meet in the finals, but which team do you think could dethrone one of them?
Yeah, so I'm probably going to shock some people here. I probably shocked some people already by saying Sacramento might make the playoffs because no one's talking about that. But I've liked the Oklahoma City Thunder all season long. And you look at a team that has chemistry, that has camaraderie. I think no team has more chemistry than this team. They're got a lot of hard-nosed guys who just go about doing their business. We've seen a lot of reports where people are complaining about the food, complaining about Jimmy Butler dribbling, complaining. And Steven Adams, I don't know if you saw the other day, he came out and basically said, well, it's not Syria. So, at least we're still living here and it's not that bad. So let's just go out and play basketball. And I like that attitude. And you also got to look at Chris Paul. I mean, this is a guy who is pretty much done. He's the Karl Malone, Charles Barkley, Patrick Ewing of his generation, right? He's pretty much done everything in the league, I guess, except winning an MVP and obviously winning an NBA championship. And I think we saw every year, I know he's older now, but every year of his career, he had great regular seasons and then he kind of just fell apart in the playoffs because he was tired, because he got injured, whatever. Now he got a 4-month layoff. And he's going to come in here, and he probably sees this as his maybe last chance at winning a championship. I think he's going to be determined. He's going to be hungry. I think they're currently sitting at the 5 seed. I think they could realistically kind of jump into that 4 spot. Whether they're playing Utah or Houston in the first round, I think they're better than both of those teams. And I think they could really give the Lakers a run for their money in that second round. And the Clippers, they're kind of the opposite of the Thunder. They have a ton of talent, but not a ton of chemistry because they love load management, haven't played together all season long. And I don't know. I just like the Thunder's chances. They're a team that is consistently let down year after year with KD and Westbrook and Paul George and Westbrook. And Chris Paul is a player that constantly was not able to win the big game with the Clippers, with the Hornets, with the Rockets. And I think this year, maybe both these guys under crazy circumstances, maybe they're finally going to be able to get their long-awaited ring.
Yeah, on the Thunder, it's an interesting pick. I don't necessarily agree. I don't think they have the best chance of knocking off one of those teams. They definitely do have a possibility. The problem with them is that they really don't have great big men on their team. I know they have one of the best guard duos in the league in Chris Paul and SGA, as well as Dennis Schroeder off the bench. But I really think they're going to struggle to stop AD, Kawhi. I think they're going to struggle to stop those guys in big matchups. I don't know. I don't totally see it, but I kind of see where they're definitely a really fun team to watch, and it would be really interesting to see how they match up against either one of those teams. I think they could keep it close, but I don't think they're going to win. I think the best team, and I think this team actually has a pretty good shot of beating either one of these teams. It's going to be the Denver Nuggets. It's probably a pretty straightforward pick here. Jokic is down 25 pounds or something like that. And he looks like he's in the best shape of his life, man. I don't know. I really want to see how he goes because they're even running him at the point. I don't know if you saw their exotic lineup, but they had a bunch. Yeah. They had Paul Millsap. They had Jokic. They were lining up with a bunch of big guys in the lineup. They had even a Bull in the lineup as well at the small forward position, which is very interesting. But having Jokic in the game, having him run the point is just an absolute mismatch. I know Anthony Davis is a great defender, but even for him, that's a tough ask to ask him to come out of the paint. When he's out of the paint as well, they're not going to be as well equipped to stop the cutting lanes and stuff like that. So I think, at least against the Lakers, I think the Nuggets have a pretty good chance of beating them. The Clippers, maybe that's a little bit of a different story. I think Paul George and Kawhi are going to be too much on the wing. But I actually do think the Nuggets have a chance against the Lakers. I don't know how you feel about that, but I do. I think they have a decent shot at knocking them off.
Yeah, I don't know. It just seems like the Nuggets. They're the third seed, and
Right.
I think let me just check real quick. I think they're 3.5 or they're a game and a half up on the Jazz, and I think realistically, I think they have a tough schedule here for that 8-game stretch in Orlando. But I think they'll do enough. They'll stay as the 3 seed. But honestly, I mean, if Houston stays in that 6th spot, I think Houston has a chance to maybe go beat Denver. I mean, look at a guy I already mentioned with Chris Paul, and you got James Harden there. Another guy who had great regular seasons, couldn't get it done in the playoffs because he was tired and banged up. He just got a 4-month off season. Now he's jumping into the playoffs. I mean, I think with Westbrook and Harden, does Denver even make it out of the first round? I don't know. We just really haven't seen it with them. I know we saw it last year, but realistically, they narrowly beat a San Antonio Spurs team that was a 7 seed, and I know they had LaMarcus Aldridge and DeMar DeRozan, but really, come on. And then I guess they forced the Blazers to 7 games. They were a decent team last year in the playoffs, but this is a team that just doesn't really, I don't know. They just don't do it for me. And I know Jokic lost a bunch of weight, but and Michael Porter Jr. is coming back to Orlando. I know they're the 3 seed, but I honestly feel more confident in both the Thunder and the Rockets to maybe make some noise here and maybe upset a Clippers or a Lakers than I do with the Nuggets, just because they just really haven't done it before, and that kind of concerns me. But again, nothing matters. It's a completely new season. Who knows? They could go on a hot stretch here for a couple months and maybe make some noise and reach the playoffs, or make a deep run in the playoffs. I mean.
Yeah, definitely. Let's jump into our next topic here. Kind of a similar topic because, we're talking about the Thunder. We're talking about the Nuggets. These are teams with a lot of depth, a lot of solid talent. What do you think is going to actually matter more during the restart? Do you think the depth and the benches are going to be more important, or do you think those stars like Embiid, Ben Simmons, LeBron, AD are going to shine in this format?
I don't know. That's a really good question. I would probably lean towards the depth, just because, like we said at the top, COVID-19 is a very serious thing, and I feel like if you're able to kind of replenish players that maybe go down with the virus, I think that could probably pay dividends, especially depending on who you lose. And if I know I just got done talking great about the Rockets, but if you're a Rockets team and Harden and or Westbrook goes down with the virus, you're kind of screwed because they're pretty much your entire team. However, if you're I look at the Raptors right there, if Siakam goes down, I think you're still going to be fine.
Right.
So I think in that sense, when you take in the virus, I think depth matters a little bit more. However, in a shortened season, and if we're hoping that the bubble kind of keeps COVID-19 away and all people stay healthy, hopefully, I think the stars are going to matter the most because it's a short season and you just need your stars to go out there and perform. And I think, honestly, I think the Clippers are the team to look out because they have both the depth and the stars. That's a really good team.
Yeah, I think that was kind of what I was going to say because I know I grouped even the Bucks and the Clippers in there. Those are teams with the stars that also have pretty good depth around them. So I think they're kind of the favorites for me. It's kind of a spoiler for later on when we talk about a couple other questions. But I think the depth is going to be the more important part because I think, like you said, if COVID hits harder than we're even predicting and kind of where we said in our first question, then I think that depth is going to be super important. And the teams without any depth, like the Rockets, I think are in a lot of trouble. I mean, even the Lakers, if LeBron or AD get it, the season's over. Like they have no chance of
even Philadelphia too.
Yeah, Philadelphia as well. They have no talent behind them. I know if a star player goes down from a lot of different teams, they're going to be out. But even the Clippers, if a guy like Paul George goes down, they still have Lou Williams, Montrezl Harrell off the bench, which are very good players, and they have a good amount of depth as well as like the Bucks. Maybe if Giannis went down, it'd be a little different. But Chris Middleton, I consider him a star, even though Drew may disagree a little bit. The rest of that team can kind of pick up the slack, I think, for a guy like Middleton or something like that. So if those second option stars go down, the depth is going to become a huge asset for those teams to still make it to the finals.
Yeah, I think if the Bucks lose Middleton, they're not really losing that much. But of course, if you want to hear my opinions about Chris Middleton, just go check out our Overrated NBA Players podcast episode. But yeah, you mentioned it there with the Clippers, though. If Paul George goes down, or even if Paul George and Kawhi go down, you still have a team there that forced the Warriors to 6 games with a healthy Kevin Durant last year in the playoffs. So they're still a good team. I think when push comes to shove, when you take into account the virus, I think depth matters more. However, if everything goes according to plan, I think stars are going to matter the most and definitely propel teams, as they do every year, into a deep postseason run. But we kind of talked about this a little bit when we were doing the Wizards, but which player are you missing out on? Which player who's missing out on the bubble do you wish was playing the most?
And this is a guy kind of I had an answer in mind, which I want to see. I won't spoil this one because I want to see if you pick him. But then I really just this isn't even a left field pick. It's just a guy I totally omitted from this list. It's Steph Curry for me, man. I really wish we saw. Honestly, it's Curry and Clay because I really wish we were seeing the Splash Bros in this format. It'd be really fun to watch them. I mean, I know not everybody loves the Warriors, but without KD, I have no problem with them at all. I really like Curry as a player, and I don't know, man. The league's just more fun with him in it. I think that's really what it comes down to. So this is a guy. It wasn't my initial thought for this, and then I kind of went through each team. So I was thinking of guys that were just missing because maybe opting out or season-long injuries, not even kind of like because Curry's back now and he's healthy, but the Warriors were just so bad this year that they had obviously no chance to make it to the bubble. So having Curry in this format would have been absolutely incredible, and I would have been very excited to see it, along with Klay Thompson, which that would have been a really fun duo to watch, and I think a team that we'd be considering up here, maybe not in the finals like favorites, but at least in a contender aspect.
Yeah, that's an interesting pick. I mean, if you think of a team that of kind of like that Elite Eight that didn't make the bubble, I think the Warriors are easily the team that I wish was in there the most, even though because they're kind of that team that you love to hate in a way. And it feels like you like when David slays Goliath, and it's weird not having them there. And obviously with Curry and Thompson, we kind of missed it out the whole season this year. It was really a bummer, and hopefully they come back next year healthier than ever and maybe can go on another championship run. But for me, I mean, I think the team that was decimated the most that I'm disappointed won't be better than I think they could be is obviously the Brooklyn Nets. I mean, you look at many, and they already were out Kyrie and KD, and then now they don't have Taurean Prince, they don't have Spencer Dinwiddie, they don't have DeAndre Jordan, they don't have Wilson Chandler. That's a team that really kind of boned me out because I think heading into the season, I think they could have made some noise in the playoffs. I know they added Jamal Crawford, but come on, like that's really not going to do that much in my opinion. However, I think the easy choice here has got to be Bradley Beal and to a lesser extent Davis Bertans because if you remember a few months ago after the All-Star break, I thought the Wizards were potentially going to make a run here at the 8th seed, and I would have just loved to see Bertans and Beal and the Wizards maybe just make a run, high-scoring offense. I know they don't play a lot of defense, but just go off in Orlando, maybe upset in Orlando or Brooklyn in the playoffs. But unfortunately, we're not going to see it. And that was one of the big things. I was really looking forward to seeing Bradley Beal play in the bubble when they originally announced this kind of return-to-play plan. And it's really disappointing and definitely a team and two players I really wish were playing for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that pick as well. Let's jump in. Let's kind of group in these next two questions together because I think it's basically kind of talking about which team do you think is going to be the biggest surprise and which team do you think will disappoint the most?
Well, I already kind of teased my surprise pick, so I'll just do that real quick. I think it's going to be the Kings. I think they have a legitimate shot at sneaking to that 8th seed and upsetting the Grizzlies and winning 2 games and maybe even winning a game or 2 against the Lakers. Who knows? I think they're the team that nobody's talking about in the West. I mean, I guess nobody's talking about the Spurs or the Suns, but they have no chance at making the playoffs. Let's just be honest here. And I think the Kings, they're a young team. They're a fun team to watch. I think they go on a little bit of a run here. And I know they got off to a terrible start this year, which kind of scares me, but I don't know. They're a team no one's talking about. I think they're the definition of a surprise team. I think they're gonna make some noise here.
Yeah, I like that pick for sure. Real quick, I'll go over mine. Biggest surprise, I think a team like I'm going to go with the Toronto Raptors this one because we haven't really talked about them that much, but I think this is a team that shouldn't be slept on. They're the 2 seed in the East. This is a team with one of the better, I would say one of the better, more underrated players in the bubble, which is Pascal Siakam. I think if we did a top 10 most underrated players, he would fit on that list nicely because he's awesome this year and nobody's even talking about it. I don't really get it. But I guess Toronto's kind of since Kawhi left, it kind of feels like they're just forgotten about. I mean, they are the 2 seed. They're still a very good team, and they're proving it this year that they didn't need. I mean, they needed him to win, but they didn't need Kawhi to be a good basketball team.
Yeah,
they have a lot of talent around them, a lot of depth, a lot of good players, a lot of just a bunch of solid guys that I feel like they have a kind of like the Thunder. They have a lot of chemistry together. This is a team that's going to be a tough out for anyone. I think they can make a dark horse run to the Eastern Conference Finals and maybe even an NBA Finals where maybe if they don't run into the Bucks get upset or something like that. I think they could be a team that sneaks into the finals. Probably won't win there, but I think it's a team that can make a nice playoff run. And then I'll go into my disappointment. And this is kind of leading into our next question as well for me. It's the Boston Celtics. While I do love Jason Tatum, and I know Drew has an interesting face, so I'm excited to see what he has to say about it. But I'll kind of talk about. I'm going to go into it briefly here, but I want to talk about it next because it relies on this one player. We don't know the health of him exactly yet. For Tatum, he's a very good player, but I really don't think this team is like, especially the bench. I don't really think they're that great. I don't know. I'm kind of. I don't think they have the greatest big men either. It's basically just Tatum, Kemba Walker, and Jaylen Brown, and I don't know. I'm not super high on their chances. I think they could be upset in the first round. I think they could make a deep playoff run, but we'll talk about that kind of right after this. You can go ahead and talk.
Yeah, it's kind of funny there because I was actually going to say before you can jump into your biggest disappointing team was I was going to pick the Raptors. They were kind of like my second team behind the Kings, but I actually think that the 2, 3, 4 seeds in the East, the Raptors, Celtics, and Heat, I think all three of those teams are kind of like surprise teams. Obviously, we know they're good teams, but I think a lot of people are thinking it's just the Bucks and nobody else. But I think the Raptors have the championship pedigree to upset the Bucks. I think the Celtics, I know you don't like them, but I think that they have. I mean, Tatum was a legitimate superstar. You got Kemba Walker, who's an All-Star. You got Jaylen Brown, who I know he missed on the All-Star team this year, but he probably should have. He was very deserving to make the All-Star team. You got a good coach in Brad Stevens. You got Gordon Hayward off the bench. You got Enes Kanter. You got Daniel Theis. You got some good players there, and I think that they have the talent to maybe even beat the Bucks. And then the Heat, we saw it there. Spoelstra, obviously a good coach. Jimmy Butler is just a dynamite player. And I think we saw that with a lockdown Giannis there towards the end, right before the hiatus. And I think they could even upset the Bucks. So those are some surprise teams. And I kind of worked in there why I think the Celtics are going to be a good team, and I kind of disagree with you there. I think if anything, people are kind of sleeping on the Celtics a little bit.
Well, all right. I mean, that's interesting for sure. Who do you have as your biggest disappointment? Before I kind of want to talk about the Celtics for the biggest question marks after this, but let's hear your biggest disappointment.
So that's tough because I feel like a lot of these teams are properly rated or underrated. I think the Nuggets. But I feel like a lot of people, I know you're high on them, but most of the things I've seen and people are kind of like, I don't really know if the Nuggets are going to be good or not. So I'm going to kind of surprise people. I think I'm going to go with the Lakers. I think the Lakers they're definitely going to win the playoff series, obviously. They're most likely going to win 2 playoff series, but I think a lot of people are feeling like it's going to be championship or bust. And I think a lot of people are picking them to win the championship. We're going to kind of see with our final predictions that we do at the end of this episode. But I don't think they're going to make it out of the Western Conference, in my opinion. And I think that's definition disappointing. I mean, we got LeBron, who doesn't have a lot of superstar MVP level years left in him. And I know they lost Avery Bradley, but they kind of replaced him with J.R. Smith, so it's not a big deal. I don't know. I just think it's going to be disappointing if they don't make the finals. And like I said, I don't really see a lot of teams disappointing. I feel like it's going to be either completely chaos and we don't know what's going to happen, or it's going to be kind of chalk. So they're my team. But
yeah.
Why don't you hop into your question marks? And you have some question marks with the Celtics.
And I definitely agree with you. I think the Celtics do have talent. It's going to come down to the health of Kemba Walker's knee is my question mark right here. And that's why the Celtics are disappointment free, because I don't know how healthy he really is. If he comes out and he's fully healthy, he looks like the same player he was all season and throughout his career, which was one of the better point guards in the league and in this bubble. Then they're going to make a pretty deep playoff run. I could even see them getting to the finals, but it literally comes down to Kemba Walker for me. And if he's not there, I think they're done in the first round if he's not healthy. And I think if he is healthy, I think they can make a pretty deep playoff run. So it's kind of an asterisk next to my disappointment, because I do agree with you. I don't think a lot of teams are going to disappoint. I think it's going to be a pretty kind of expected, kind of how it's expected. But I do like the Lakers pick there as well. That's very interesting. But I think the Celtics have the biggest question mark for me.
Yeah, it's either going to be completely chalk or it's just going to be like so chaotic that we can't even imagine what's going to happen because we just don't know because these teams haven't played in 4 months. But for teams with the biggest question marks, I'd have to say probably the Nuggets. I know guys kind of keep destroying the Nuggets here, and that was not my intent when we started this episode. But I just think like Jokic, is he going to be better now that he's slimmed down, or is he going to be worse? He always kind of seems to start the season extremely slow, so it'll be interesting to see where that happens. I know
That's
Michael
fair.
Porter Jr. Reports are that he's en route to Orlando. If they get him, that's going to be huge. But if they don't get him, then that's going to be kind of a problem. The Jazz too. I know they're the 4th seed right now. No one's talking about them, but it's going to be interesting to see whether like Rudy Gobert, who rightfully or not rightfully is kind of being held responsible for the COVID-19 outbreak, at least in the NBA. And reports are him and Mitchell really aren't getting along too well. So it'll be kind of fun to see. I don't want to say fun to see, but interesting to see how those kind of questions get resolved. The Rockets, will Harden and Westbrook, will this kind of break give them the necessary rest they need to maybe make a deep playoff run? Who knows? And then even a team like the Indiana Pacers too, that literally no one's talking about. But will Victor Oladipo come back?
Right. Yeah, that's very interesting.
So I know you're really big on the Celtics, and that's a big question mark. But for me, there's not a team with a big question mark. There's just a bunch of teams with some kind of tiny question marks.
For me, some of the bigger ones, just Kemba's health, Zion returning. I think it's a big one as well. Oladipo, that's another one that I'm really not sure how that's going to go as well. I think those are the 3 probably biggest question marks. But who do you think is going to end up being the MVP of the bubble rather than like the season as a whole? Let's just erase what happened this season. Who do you think in the bubble is going to take over?
Yeah, so this is probably going to come back to haunt me here. And but I got to go with, I'm going to triple down here, and I'm going to say it's going to be Chris Paul. I think, I don't know. I just feel extremely confident in the Thunder's ability to maybe just shock the world here and go on a run. And I think if Chris Paul gets his ring, that's going to be a huge storyline. And I think he could have the potential to maybe even win the MVP. So I don't know. It's going to be kind of nuts. I think the more kind of general answer, if I'm not just being crazy, is probably a Giannis or a LeBron or a Kawhi or even Anthony Davis. Give some Jimmy Butler love there too. I think the Heat are a very sneaky good team, but I'm going to be crazy. I'm going to say Chris Paul.
Yeah, that's definitely an interesting. It's definitely an interesting take. I'm also gonna go not a chalk pick here. I'm gonna leave all those names out because those are just kind of obvious guys. I'm gonna go with Pascal Siakam. I'm also gonna double down here. I think he's a very talented player. I think he's extremely underrated. And I think he's also a very fun player to watch. I know people I feel like people just don't watch enough Raptors basketball. They don't know how good this guy really is. I think he is a borderline top 10, maybe top 15 player in this league. And I think he can prove himself. I think he is, really. He averaged 25 a game on one of the best teams in the league. I think he's proven that he's a very, very high-level player. And I think he has a lot of room to grow as well. I don't think he's done improving as a basketball player. So I think this bubble is a very good opportunity for him to show. Maybe he did a lot of – I haven't seen any reports about it, but maybe he was training really hard in the offseason or kind of that break or whatever. He's gotten even stronger, gotten even better because I feel like he's had that incremental increase every single season. He's gotten better, you know. He was really good 2 years ago with Kawhi when they won the finals. He was a great second option. And then when Kawhi left, he just instantly slotted right into that star role, and he's been excellent this year. I feel like he really does not get enough love around the league. I think he's an awesome player and very fun to watch. I think you're going to see in the bubble, and I'm going to tune into the Raptors. I didn't even know how much I loved them until this list because this is I've been talking them up a lot in the last couple of questions, but I'm excited to watch them for sure.
Yeah, the thing with Siakam is he got off to a amazing start to the season, and then he kind of cooled down down the stretch. So it'll be kind of interesting to see here in this abbreviated kind of mini postseason if he'll be able to kind of be that player he was at the beginning of the year or be the player he was kind of towards the end. So, but the Raptors, that's a good pick. I like that we both kind of pick some off the wall guys here because the obvious answers are Giannis, Anthony Davis, LeBron, Kawhi, Paul. Those are the obvious guys. But I did want to give a quick shout to Jimmy Butler too because I think the Heat.
Yeah.
They're a sneaky finals pick, man. I like the Heat. I like the Heat a lot. Duncan Robinson was going off, Michigan alum last night. I don't know if you saw, but he had 5
I did see. Yeah, he was kind of splashing.
Here we go. But who are the favorites in the East and the West? We've kind of been briefly talking about this throughout, but how would you start off with your favorites in the East? I know the obvious kind of players here, but maybe some surprise guys too.
Yeah, so well, the obvious favorites are going to be the Bucks. They're the team that was kind of expected to win the or get to the finals at the start of the season. They've kind of just dominated this year. But I think it's a team that I don't think they're as ironclad as everyone thinks. I think this is a team that could easily be knocked off by,
Yeah.
and I think the Raptors, the Celtics, the Pacers are all kind of, and even the Sixers and Heat are all in that second tier. The favorite out of that list, I'm gonna triple down. The Raptors probably my second team. The Heat are very interesting as well. Probably the worst two on that list are probably going to go ahead and be the Pacers and Celtics. While I don't know about Oladipo and Kemba's health or whether or not they're going to play or whatever, those will probably be like the two that I would say are not really contenders or not favorites. At least I would probably go Bucks, Raptors, Heat, and then Sixers in the
Yeah,
East.
we'll stick in the East here real quick. The Bucks are obviously the favorite, but I think what's really fun about kind of this league, I mean, last year I know the Raptors won the championship, but the Warriors were like the clear-cut favorite. Heading into this finals, there really isn't like a clear-cut number one. I mean, I guess there are the favorites, obviously, but for years there, it was like the Warriors, they're never going to lose the playoffs. I mean, there's a roadmap for the Bucks not making it out of the East. I think the Raptors are probably the number 2 team. The Heat are the 3 team, and then I know you don't like the Celtics, but they're my 4 team for sure. I think they have the talent to maybe scare a Milwaukee team as long as Kemba stays healthy. And even Philadelphia too. I would squeak them in there as well. They also have the talent. I'm just kind of a little. I know I was positive about them earlier, but I'm a little pessimistic if they can still kind of bring it together. Indiana, they're not. They're better than Brooklyn or Orlando, but they're not as good as those other teams I just mentioned.
I agree with that.
They're going to win a game or two in the playoffs, and then they're going to get out and they're going to go home. And that's what happens every year, and it sucks if you're an Indiana fan. But hey, at least you're not a Pistons fan. Anyway, so your favorites in the West.
Well, the clear-cut favorites are the 2 teams from LA, and then the Nuggets and Thunder are probably my second tier as well. I'm not really going to go too far in depth. I don't really think any other team has a shot. I don't think the Rockets have a chance. I don't think the Jazz have a chance. I don't think the Mavericks, who we haven't really touched up on, I don't think they're going to do much in the playoffs either. So it's going to come down to 2 LA teams, the Nuggets and the Thunder for me.
Yeah, I think the Lakers and Clippers are the 2 number 1 favorites. You could even say maybe they're 1A and 1B. You really can't put one of them over above the other. Denver, I know you're high on them. I'm just still kind of pessimistic just because we haven't really seen it before, but they definitely have the talent, especially if Porter Jr. comes. They can be a potential favorite. I really like the Thunder, as I've mentioned before. I also like the Rockets. And I would even throw a little bone at the Mavericks and the Blazers too. I think they could be a team that maybe, I mean, we've seen the last few years, Luka gets off to these amazing starts. And Dallas was a 3 seed there early in the year for much of the early part of the season. They kind of faltered there down the stretch and ended up being a 7 seed, but who knows? Maybe they upset. I don't know if they're going to upset a Clippers in the first round, but maybe if they squeak into that 6 seed, which I know they're a game and a half here, is probably not going to happen, but maybe they upset a Denver Nuggets and make it into the second round. Yep. Who knows?
That's interesting. Yeah. I like some of those takes there for sure. We'll kind of touch up on that. Kind of our last question going into the restart. Who do you think is going to get to the finals? How many games do you think it's going to take for which team to win?
Yeah, so I think with it, so I'll give you like my conference finals picks, and then I'll also give you like my finals pick. So conference finals, I think it's going to be Bucks, and give me the Raptors. Give me the Raptors. I really want to say Heat, but I think the Heat are just going to not have enough to get past the Bucks there in the second round. And then I think it's going to be Bucks over Raptors there in the conference finals. I think it's going to go to 7 games. But I think Giannis can get his revenge over the Raptors from last season. In the West, I think you have to go with, I know I was really talking the Thunder up, and I really want to put them in the conference finals, but I'm not. I think it's going to be Lakers-Clippers. And I think the Clippers are going to get by the Lakers. I'm going to say 6 games. Actually, no. I'm going to say 5 games. I'm going to say 6 games. I'm not going to be crazy. So I'm going to say, I think it's going to be Clippers-Bucks there in the finals. And I think the Clippers are going to beat the Bucks in, let's say 7 games. I think Kawhi is going to get his 2nd ring in a row, and he's going to win Finals MVP for his 3rd different team, win a championship with his 3rd different team, which I believe is unprecedented. So, I think Kawhi and the Clippers are going to get it done again. How about you?
Well, I'm going to go really off the board. Just kidding. I literally have the exact same prediction as you. I think it's going to be Raptors, Bucks in 6, Clippers, Lakers. I think that's going to go to 7, but I think the Clippers are going to win, and then I think the Clippers are going to beat the Bucks in 6. So we didn't talk about this before, but it definitely seems like we did. How often does it where two teams or two people with a 16-team playoff have the same 4 teams in the conference finals and the same 2 teams with the same winner? That doesn't happen very often.
I mean, it doesn't happen a lot, obviously. I know I've seen some people say, I mean, some other kind of popular picks, I guess. I would say Clippers Bucks isn't even the most popular pick, though. I mean, I've seen a lot of Raptors Lakers. I've seen a lot of Bucks Lakers, obviously. But yeah, I think I don't know how many predictions you've seen, but I think the Bucks, Raptors, Lakers, and Clippers are the 4 teams that people are unanimously set on that these are teams that are going to make the finals at least. But I honestly, of these teams, I would not count out the Heat or the Thunder. I think they have a legitimate shot at making the finals if you want to go a little bit off the board.
And for me, it would probably be the Sixers. The 2 teams maybe that would be first in, if not for them, would be the Sixers. I think they have a decent chance of getting hot and being one of these elite teams.
Yeah.
And the Nuggets being the other one for me. So that's my kind of, I wouldn't even say dark horses, but my last 2 out for those 2 Western.
If you want to hear a really dark horse, I've seen a lot of people saying the Blazers might make it to the finals, and so they're not even in the playoffs right now. But they might make.
I'm not going to go there.
That's a pick though. That's people are saying that, and that would be chaos if they did that. They upset the Lakers in the first round. So
you know how happy I'd be about that because of how big Blazers and Dame fan I am. And I think if they do get into the playoffs, like we said earlier, I know we haven't talked about this since because they're not even in the playoffs yet. So what's the point of talking about them a ton? But if they get to that 8 spot with Dame, CJ, and all of them, I think the Lakers are going to have a super hard. I think it's going to be similar to the Clippers. Was a Clippers Warriors series last year, where it's going to be a really tough series for that favorite. I could see the Blazers winning that series because you saw Dame earlier in the season just absolutely put the team on his back and carry them to a win in LA, right off of Kobe's unfortunate passing. He came in there when the building was kind of just dead, and it was obviously a very special day, special moment. I expected the Lakers to be heavy favorites and win that game by a lot. Dame came in and just kind of shut it down. That's what he did. I mean, he's a player that can block out all the noise. Doesn't matter where he's playing at. I think this is a guy that is well equipped for a bubble series for me, at least in the playoffs. So if they can get there, if they can get to that playing game, they can win that playing game and get to that 8 seed. I think they have a heck of a chance to at least come really close to beating the Lakers.
Yeah, and he did that all without much of his big guys. I think I don't think you mentioned there. Zach Collins is back. Zach Collins is back. Nurkic is obviously back. Whiteside's still there. You got CJ McCollum, you got Melo, and I think they got the size to compete with a Laker team. And it'll be tough. Kind of defend. I think kind of an underrated player that's not making the trip to the bubble is Trevor Ariza, because I think Ariza could probably match up at least better than the guys they have there against the LeBron. But it'll be. I mean, I know I talked up the Kings a lot in this episode, but of the 3 teams, I really want Portland to make it into that 8 spot, beat the Grizzlies, because I think that of those 4 teams, I think the Blazers have the best shot at really just completely throwing the season on its head and upsetting the Lakers in the first round. But it's going to be hard to do because LeBron's LeBron, even though he's older now. So
100% there. Anything else before we wrap this up?
No, I'm super excited for sports to be back. Obviously, I know we're not an NHL podcast, but NHL's back like a couple days after the NBA. MLB is coming back tonight, the day that we're recording here. It's just really nice to have sports back. I know some people are like, well, maybe we shouldn't have sports in this time, but honestly, I mean, sports, it's a great unifier, and I feel like it's going to definitely kind of bring people together, and it's going to be really fun to watch, and hopefully all goes well, and hopefully people stay safe, stay healthy, and we get to see the NBA crown a champion here in a couple months. So really looking forward to it, and it's going to be super chaotic.
Yeah, and kind of touching up on what you just said there to wrap it up, we could be seeing kind of like a sports equinox coming up here with all 4 teams playing very meaningful games, because you could have all 3, the NBA, the NHL, MLB, all playing their playoff at the same time, whereas you got October NFL football, baby. Imagine that. That would be unreal. My grades would slip a little bit. My grades would slip. I'd be watching a lot of sports, and I'm a huge NFL fan. But it'd be very hard for me to pick an October NFL game over a NBA or MLB championship playoff game or whatever. It's gonna be. Ooh, I'm excited.
Yeah.
I'm kind of my chops over here for October. Hoping everything goes well. Hoping everybody stays safe. And let's go. I'm pumped.
Yeah. Obviously safety and health is first and foremost. And I really hope that this all goes well because like you said, it's going to be nuts. And regardless, this is something that I don't think we've ever seen before, obviously, in sports, and probably something hopefully at least we'll never have to see again. But the virus obviously has really kind of torn up a lot of people's lives, and it's really kind of sucked these past few months, but it is at least some kind of good, I guess you could say, it kind of came out of it because we get to see all these sports play at the same time. Hopefully it's going to be a lot of fun to watch. I can't wait. I think we're a little bit we're about a week away here, day of recording, for when the NBA restart will officially begin. Scrimmage is already starting, but yeah, I can't wait. I really can't wait. And yeah,
too much sports, man. I'm going to be overwhelmed. I'm not even a big NHL fan, but I'm gonna have to tune into some of these games. I gotta get into it a little bit. So I'm just like you just keep saying at the end here. We're both really excited. Obviously, you should be too. I think you should be rooting for all these sports to succeed, even the ones that you don't watch. If you don't watch the NBA that much, you don't watch baseball that much, it doesn't matter. Even hockey, you need to be rooting for all these to come back so you can get the sport you want to keep playing. If one's succeeding, that means the others are probably not far behind.
Yeah, and it's giving me an adjustment though, because sports have been gone here for over 4 months now, almost 5 months, and now we're
feels like the new normal.
We're gonna have all of them back at the same time. It's gonna be really weird because I forgot how it was when sports did exist. So, but obviously for the purpose of this podcast, we focus on the NBA, but I can't wait for NHL playoffs. Can't wait for everything to come back. So hopefully all goes well. Hopefully everyone stays safe. Hopefully everyone enjoys the bubble down there in Orlando. But yeah, thank you for listening for the Zone Defense podcast. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Spotify, Twitter, and Instagram. We've done a ton of different episodes. We kind of focused on NFL here the last few weeks. We did a mock draft. We did a couple of division deep dives. But hopefully the NBA season goes well here, as we've been saying, and we can kind of amp up the NBA content here and talk about the playoffs, talk about who ends up getting in, maybe the play-in games. It's going to be a lot of fun, so definitely you don't want to miss it. But thank you for listening to this episode. Can't wait to see you next time, and peace.